Hey folks, thanks for tuning in. Welcome to episode 5 of the 21st Century Blues podcast. I'm Tim, and today I'm joined by Nicholas Samstag. He's a clinical psychologist and the host of the Mental Health in Business podcast. I was actually a guest on one of Nick's episodes. I'll make sure to link that one in the show notes for anyone who's interested because that was quite an awesome discussion. And we're in for another great one today, right, Nick? We'll be talking about a very important topic. It's a bit of a heavy one, but hopefully we'll be able to finish on some positive notes. So we'll be talking about the anxiety and hopelessness epidemic that we're kind of in the middle of right now. So, Nick, welcome to the show. Welcome to my podcast. And I'm very, very glad to get to speak with you again.
Well, thanks so much, Tim. It's great to see you again. And I'm excited about our pod.
Yeah, as I said, it's kind of grim, and yeah, I guess the first thing to really set the stage would be to to figure out, have people actually lost hope, and what in particular have they lost hope in? Is this like hope in the future, or hope in the future, their particular future, hope in the future of humanity? Can we talk about this to start off?
Sure, sure. I mean, the funny thing about hope, right, is that um, in the way you intend it, hope's a good thing, right? We need hope, but there's also that quip, that hope is not a strategy. So I think it's from Alice in Wonderland, hoping will not make it so. You
Mm-hmm.
actually need to do something. And I think there's so much to say about this, of course, but one of the issues I always come back to with my patients is that a lot of anxiety is another way of saying getting lost in abstractions,
Okay.
right? You're anxious about the world, you're anxious about, you know, justice and all that. And all that's fine. But if you're having anxiety and you're thinking about things in a in that kind of form, the chances are you don't feel like you're engaged. You don't feel like you're actually doing something. So one of the first things I try to do is to understand what's actually happening to you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we can be anxious about all kinds of things, but then the question is, what are you doing? And when we start asking those questions, and thinking about tangible, concrete actions that can be taken, anxiety tends to drop precipitously, right? And it's also worth mentioning that anxiety, which we think of as the coming from the brainstem historically, is what saves us, right? You if you turn the corner and you see a bear rushing towards you, you're anxious, and that's a good thing. You have to get out of the way of the bear, right? So we're often without saying it, distinguishing between neurotic anxiety and absolutely normal anxiety, whatever normal means, absolutely understandable, useful anxiety. So given the state of the world, there are things happening that are reasonably making us anxious.
Mm-hmm.
There's scary things happening. But in order to help that anxiety, we need to actually do things. We need to read more, or we need to find out more facts. We need to find ways of engaging instead of withdrawing. So that's the first thing I would say about that.
I think we've come to the first problem right at the start, and it's that anxiety often kind of paralyzes you instead of motivating you to move and to do something. Like even in the case of a bear, or some animal attacking a human 30,000 years ago during an ice age, or something like a saber-toothed tiger. I think I always give this example. Uh, I can totally imagine, either you being anxious and that means you're able to get out of the way quickly, or you being so scared or so anxious that you actually completely freeze up. And in some cases, if the animal is more dependent, like their eyesight is more dependent on movement, that might actually help you. But in the case of like a bear, when you're trying to get away, it might be, you know, detrimental to freeze up. And in a similar vein, in today's society, it gets really, really difficult to just get stuck in a rut when you're anxious, to be so anxious that you're kind of physically almost incapable of doing something. So how do you go about that, I guess?
Well, again, I think in that case, especially, the question is, what's actually happening to you now?
Mhm.
Is there a bear at the door or some metaphoric equivalent? Like, what are the facts? I'm a big believer in facts, and as you know, I'm sure you agree, we're in a post-fact age. People don't really agree on what the facts are, or I think some people don't even think there are facts anymore. And I think that that's, if you're immobilized, you need to be grounded, and you're grounded, I think, primarily when you ask yourself, what's actually happening right now? Like, are you in danger? Somebody at the door? Is somebody threatening you, or are you just spinning out of control internally?
Mhm.
And that's, neurotic anxiety is a relative newcomer into the human species, right? Because if you're in the jungle and you need to survive, you're not neurotically anxious typically. You're anxious for all good reasons, having to do with bears and
Mhm.
pythons and whatnot, right? So I think it's a great area to think about. And just to say something completely contradictory to what I just said, philosophers over time have used anxiety in a very positive way, right? So I can't think of his name right now. Kierkegaard. Kierkegaard said that anxiety is the first blush of dizzying freedom,
Mhm. Okay, that makes
right?
sense.
Right. Like you're very anxious because you've been a banker for 20 years and you hate it and you don't know what to do. And you just think, I can't go on another day. And then you realize what I want to do is I want to play the guitar and sing songs,
Mm.
and that's really anxiety producing. But it's also the transom across which is freedom. So there's that, right? And is that neurotic or not neurotic? I don't think that's an interesting question, but it's anxiety. It's also worth, just to say some more things. Neurologically, anxiety and depression are very close to each other in the brain. Not to get into that, but are you depressed or are you anxious is often a
Mhm.
question that's really hard to answer. But if we're talking about, the negative forms of anxiety, then I think, yeah, I think the best thing that we can all do is do something and try to deconstruct what we even mean by I'm so anxious.
So you said that this is more of a symptom of the modern society. It's not something that has been like ever present ever since the dawn of like sentient humanity. So why would you say that there's so much anxiety in the world in today's age? What are like the main reasons or the main elements behind it?
Do you have a few months to talk about this? I think, wow. I mean, okay, some
Yeah.
low-hanging fruit. I think the resurgence of fascism across the globe,
Mhm.
including the United States, maybe especially the United States, I don't know. I think that's one obvious point, that human freedoms are being assaulted across the board on so many different levels. That's not neurotic anxiety. That's real anxiety. People are being denied rights, and funding is being cut, and people are being killed. And that's there's nothing neurotic about that. But I think you know if that's not the case for us, I think it also impacts us. And I'm sounding like a broken record, but I think what we need to do is we need to find engaging and productive and meaningful things to do about it instead of just stewing. It's easy to stew and, sort of just feel bad about it. But, I mean, most of us can't, stop our jobs and go do something else, but we can write letters, we can call people, we can help people, we can support those parts of society that are trying to stem the tide of fascism, you know, we can do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a weird time to be alive. You know, you have all of this, and I think that even without such drastic things going on in society, there's still a lot of causes, a lot of things that can make you anxious and make you lose hope, right? I mean, okay, hopelessness, I guess, is more closely related to everything that's going on, but like when speaking of anxiety, even something like social media, the stuff that we talked about on your podcast that we're going to link in the show notes of this episode about how social media and the overabundance of digital communication is kind of eroding the what makes communication so key to humans, and that leads to more disconnect, more loneliness, leads to more
Yeah,
anxiety because we don't have these support systems anymore.
that's true. That's true. I mean, it's so true. A day doesn't go by where I don't see people in New York of all ages, all different colors and stripes of people on their cell phones.
Mhm.
This has been said 1,000 times, but I go out to dinner with my girlfriend, or and I look around and people are just like this on their cell phones. Which is not to say that some of those people aren't doing, creative, interesting things. I'm not judging that, but just you know, in terms of like 10 years ago or 15 years ago, we would look at this and go, that's really weird. What are these people doing? But they have their nose in their devices, which is not, I don't think that's a good thing. And so, yeah, right. I think the digital world and the the controversies that it's spawning are fascinating and upsetting. I think that the fact that four of the world's richest people, went to Trump's inauguration, I think that's alarming.
Yeah,
But we have oligarchs now. How did that happen?
I'm not sure if we have them now or if we've had them for some time and it's just gotten super, super obvious and in on the nose right now. But yeah, definitely. I mean, like you can't even get your head around what's happening. And if you try to, you just get more anxious and lose even more hope, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. So I think, I think these are times to mobilize, to write letters, to take part in marches, to make your voice heard.
I think that to return to like what we can do about it and the importance of doing something over being stuck in this rut of being immobilized in your own anxiety. I think one of the most difficult things here for people is the realization that you don't need to start big when you're trying to get out of it, right? I mean, most people think that, okay, yeah, anxiety is something that's so big, or depression is something that's so huge that some drastic steps would be needed to get out of it. But if you try to do all the big steps up front, then you'll never be able to make them, right? You need to start small. You need to start with like the basics. I like tricking myself. I like these little small life hacks when it's like, okay, if I want to exercise more, what's the easiest thing for me to do? And I'll just do that. I'll just do, let's say, 10 push-ups each day. And I'll just do them in
Mhm.
the morning. And I'll just do 10. I won't do anything more. Just 10 push-ups. That takes me like 2 minutes. 10 push-ups. But then, I've done 10 push-ups. Why not just do 10 more? Why not lift some weights as well? Why not stretch? Why not go for a run? Because I already did those 10 push-ups, right? But if I were like, okay, I need to have this super long and super thorough exercise routine, and I'm going to do this for 1 hour, and then I'm going to run for 2 hours, and my diet is going to be super strict, and I'm going to stick to everything. Then you wake up and you're like, oh man, there's so many things I have to do, and I'm just anxious. How much easier would it be if you just did those 10 push-ups and then you'd be like, okay, or like another cool trick that I used was like every day before work, 5 minutes of cleaning, 5 minutes of exercise, and 5 minutes of music. If I
Yeah.
started with the exercise, then I wouldn't want to do anything else because I would get tired too easily. But if I start with cleaning, if it's just 5 minutes, then it doesn't have to be anything big, but it can be something necessary, something that you wouldn't get done while you were like deep cleaning the house. And
Mhm.
then then you do the exercise since you've already kind of activated your body through the cleaning. And then as a reward, you get 5 minutes of music. And it's like just 15 minutes, and your day will probably proceed completely differently than if you just woken up and, I don't know, ate some junk food or something.
That's great. It's I forget the term. I think it's called stacking. I think it's called stacking. If you're trying to do a thing on a regular basis, what you do is you stack it after a thing that you already do on a regular basis.
Mhm.
So you always brush your teeth every morning. So if you want to make sure you clean the apartment, then that's what you do after the
Mhm.
teeth apartment.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, it
So
stacks.
kind of, oh, yeah, I'm stacking different routines, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's a smart way of doing exactly what you're describing.
So to kind of start tying things together and to kind of return to the initial points and initial topics that we discussed today, uh, we could say that hope is not always the best thing, I guess, and also anxiety is not always the worst thing. I guess this is kind of one of the gist that we were trying to convey initially.
I think that's right, and I think one size does not fit all. But I think if we're going to speak in a general way, you know, I mean, we haven't talked about critical thinking, but I think you know, I think a lot of what we're discussing is genuinely scary. We're not really talking about neurotic anxiety. We're talking about understandable anxiety. And I think understandable anxiety is best treated by getting more facts, by not listening to the news outlets that are hysteric in either direction, in any direction, but finding out from trusted sources, what is the story? And
Mhm.
then as you say, maybe doing something small, write a letter, start a blog, do something like that. Um, and recognize your limitations. I think a lot of anxiety is caused because we don't really do that. It's like we are small humans mostly. So
Well, I guess it's either not knowing your limitations. I mean, that can be either thinking that you're capable of more than you are, or believing that you're not capable of what you're actually capable of.
yeah, nicely said. Yeah, that's great. Right on the point.
And well, actually, I think that this would actually be quite a good note to finish this particular conversation on. Nix, I did promise that we'll try to finish on a positive note. Just before we do you have any final words, any final tips to maybe people who are struggling with anxiety and hopelessness?
Um, sure. I mean, probably what most people already know. I think aerobic exercise is something that has been proven again and again to help depression and anxiety, 5 minutes a day, even. So I would recommend that. I'd recommend meditation,
Mhm.
which if done regularly has a huge impact. And I also I also would think about what it is that we can do to give back to someone,
Mhm.
to help someone. Maybe it's the guy in the corner who needs coffee money. Maybe it's working in a hospital if you have that time. But giving back often makes you feel better and it reduces anxiety.
I found that it's almost impossible to be altruistic because as soon as you start doing good for others, then, things just start getting repaid for you. Even if you don't do it because you expect anything in return, the universe just kind of provides.
Nicely said.
Nick, if anybody would like to connect with you or check out your podcast, where can they do that?
They go to excuse me, they can go to my website, which is nicholassamstag.com. And all my information is there.
Okay, awesome. I'll link those two links as well. I mean, together with the episode on your podcast that featured me that we talked. And yeah, Nick, thanks so much. It was great having you on the podcast and discussing this with you.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And well, to everyone listening, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. That's all for today. and we'll see you again next time.